everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again. Today we are joined by the one and only Kate Story. Hi, Kate. Thank you so much
Hi.
for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Perfect. Did you want to give everyone a quick introduction about yourself?
Sure. So I'm originally from Newfoundland. I'm a Newfoundlander. I was born and raised in St. John's on the south side, which means something if you're from St. John's, not if you're from anywhere else. And I've lived in Peterborough, though, for longer than I've lived anywhere. I came here to go to Trent, and then I stayed for a year after that doing theater. Then I went to Toronto, and I thought I was going to graduate school, but that lasted like 3 months. And then I was in a car accident in Newfoundland and, deregistered myself from university from my hospital bed, which sounds very dramatic, but I felt quite calm about it. And I basically had this sort of early adult revelation of like, oh, if I could die at any moment, right, I should do what I want to do. Mm-hmm. So I had noticed I was much more interested in theater and performance and the kind of radical experimental stuff that was going on in Toronto at the time. So I spent the next 7 years living in Toronto and just going around and doing my best to get involved in anything that felt experimental, what we'd now call devised theater, which it didn't have a label back then, but anything that felt to me like all the creators were working on it together, that the director, if there was a director, had an interesting vision, that it was experimental, that it was multidisciplinary. That was my jam. So I was really lucky to work with some amazing people and also see some really great theater. And I got some training, workshop training and stuff while I was down there. Despite all that, I was never that happy living in Toronto, and I'd always stayed connected to Peterborough, partly through my friends at what was called the Union Theatre, which is this like little anarchic DIY, really dysfunctional performance space. And also friends through Fourth Line Theatre had just started at that time as well. And I was involved in a few of the early Fourth Line shows in the first decade of that company. So I just kept coming back to Peterborough kind of while I was living in Toronto. And then I just drifted back here. So since moving back here, I guess what's ended up happening is that I just continued doing what I started doing in Toronto, which was making performance works. And then I started doing more creation for and with other people on their own works. And I guess, I don't know what the word is. Directing, kind of. I mean, I do direct. I love directing and choreographing. I have a dance background initially. My first training was in dance, started when I was 4 years old. And I trained pretty seriously until I was 16.
Oh, nice.
So ever since I've just been, I just want to make theater, and I want other people to be able to make theater and performance. Let's say, call it performance. That's my passion. So, and I'm also a writer. I also write prose, but my writing really started on the stage. Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic. Such a jack
Is
of
it?
all trades. Circling back to Erring specifically, could you tell us a little bit about what you've been working on for Erring?
Yeah, so Erring at King George. When the call first went out, this is like pre-pandemic, let us all cast our minds back. Remember those days? There was the first kind of walkthrough of the space for artists, and we went, and I just was totally uninspired by the space. I just was like, I get nothing from this. I said, all I can think when I walk into those classrooms is it's a classroom. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really want to do something about a school. Like I just had no interest. And I think because I was so busy. And so I went, it's too bad. It wasn't like Erring on the Mount where I felt like that deconsecrated nunnery, was so exciting to me. So I just like, I'm not really feeling it. And there were just a ton of other people. And I was like, oh God, there's tons of great artists, they don't need me. And time went on. And then Bill suggested a few times just talking, he was like, I'd really been looking for a piece that would take the audience traveling through a school. And I said, well, do you want me to try to think of something? He's like, well, would you? And I said, well, I'll propose something. Wow, what would take you through a school? And I realized it's kind of fun going through it. It's a beautiful old building. Mm-hmm. And I thought, what we used to call a janitor, they're now called custodians, would be a great character because they know everything. So I started interviewing Bill helped me. He connected me with ex-students and ex-teachers and current teachers who were moving from King George to Kawate, and also connected me with Alice Williams, who's a wonderful artist. She makes these beautiful quilts, and she's also an elder. And Alice was a big part of the movement to name the new school Kawate, to acknowledge Indigenous issues and the land. So she also became part of the project, and I basically that's when I got interested in the project, and I just felt like there are some stories here that can come alive, and it's about really seeing the students, like really seeing them and providing opportunities that they might not be able to afford otherwise, and being a good school despite being in East City and being working class. And like there was this kind of history in Peterborough, that working class history, that felt really lively to me. And I approached artists who I thought would both, some of them I thought would really kind of amplify that, and then other artists that I thought would really provide a really necessary contrast to that, or counter narrative.
What was it like working with so many disciplines on this project? Because it's very multidisciplinary. Did you find it was making it easier, more difficult? Did you think that it helped develop the work faster? What did you find was like the most useful in making it multidisciplinary?
It's an interesting question, because to be honest with you, I didn't even consider it. It just made sense to me to have different. It wasn't even conscious, honestly. I love multidisciplinary work. I do work in different disciplines, and I felt like, I think maybe now that you ask me, I'm sort of thinking as I'm talking, that in some way, each classroom having a very different performer with a very different atmosphere and even a different discipline felt exciting to me. And I felt like it was also going to help the audience get a really rich experience, because almost everyone goes to school. It's our first experience of being institutionalized. And we have this very granular experience of our schools, especially elementary school, and
yes, for sure.
Yeah, like every little corner, like every classroom has its own atmosphere, places you had, if you were bullied, places you used to hide, or places you felt happy, or classes that you dreaded and classes that you kind of looked forward to, or maybe even loved. The way the teacher acted, the perfume a teacher might wear, like it's such a, when childhood is such a rich time. Yeah. So I felt like it would help the audience, like, in a sense, trick the brains of the audience into just paying that much attention again. I feel like as a director, you're kind of the first audience in a sense, and
exactly.
And you have to be interested. And if you're not interested, the audience is probably not interested, or you just have to assume that. So I was always interested in what the artists were doing. They were also different from each other. And the challenge that provides is that your audiences are going to be filled with people with really different backgrounds and expectations. Some of them are going to absolutely love a piece of contemporary performance that feels really abstract, and they'll be like, "Oh, thank God." Other people want something more, this is a story about when Quaker Oats exploded, and I've got that bit of history. Some of them went to the school, and so they want to see like really particular pieces of history about King George. Right. So it's kind of trying to please everybody. Do I succeed? I don't know. And I think, for me, the Indigenous acknowledgement of the land and the people is so important, and something that obviously a school called King George, they got better at it in the last years of King George School. And I talked to the last principal of King George School. Right. I talked to some teachers, talking to having Alice Williams be part of it, and working with two different artists who are Indigenous, and work from that place. Right. On the project was really important. And of course, they're all bringing really different things. Just because they happen to be Indigenous doesn't mean that they're bringing the same sensibility to this project. They're not. So, but it brings that history in. So that was another piece that I thought we're all really hungry for, settler and Indigenous. Like, we really want to see that acknowledgement happening in a real way. In action, I guess. So I'm not claiming that this piece succeeds. I'm just saying that was the intention. And also intergenerational. I wanted to make sure we had some young artists and some older artists. And one of the artists actually one of their kids went to King George and is still going now to Kawate. And this parent, they brought in a transgender thread into the whole thing, which I was thrilled about. Like, where's my bathroom? I've got to pee, you know? And so that was a really fun piece as well. So having like everything from kids to senior artists also felt really important. Yeah, and just like I said, just find like a place, a setting for that work to shine, and also just to trust that the audience is smart and the audience is going to come to their own conclusions.
Yeah,
about this stuff.
Whatever they take from it, and that part is kind of out of your hands almost.
Yeah, thank God.
Exactly, right? Yeah. Okay, well, just to wrap us up, I was wondering if you had a message to leave with the audience when they see the piece, if you had something that you would like them to part with when they watch, what do you think that would be?
I got very sad about the old building. And I am sentimental, and I do think, change is really important, but there's something wrong with the funding. So literally what I have gathered, and I may be wrong about this, but I've been told by people who know, that the school board can get funding to build a new school, but they can't get funding to fix the old school, to make it accessible, etc. I think it's a real shame. I feel like the reason I think that is because you can't erase that history. I think it's better to go like, yeah, there was a time when it was all settler all the time. King George was the name of the school. Not to say, I think the name changes. I'm all for the name change to Kawate.
Yeah.
But not everyone is, but I am. But that old history, and also, frankly, the carbon footprint thing. So it's like, those bricks were made here. The timbers were hauled by horses. You cannot beat the carbon footprint of an old local building.
That's like sustainable as it gets, really.
Exactly. I feel like there's a lot of stories in that building, and if we were able to channel anything true, that's fantastic. And even if it's just some stories that we told, I'm happy with that as well. But yeah, I think I would like people to just think about, more that the ecological footprint is so important to me, and also just that idea of like, how do we move forward while still acknowledging the past, and what's the best way to do that? And there's not one way, I don't think. I think there have to be multiple ways, and we have to keep listening and asking the right questions, and those questions are going to keep changing as time goes on. For sure, absolutely, and they should. Yeah, they have to. Yeah, there's so many different histories and so many stories, and these walls have heard them. Yeah. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you, Simon. Thank you. Really, it was my pleasure to get all this history and learn more about the work you're doing. So thank you so much. Yeah, and good luck with the rest of the interviews. Thank you so much.